When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's it, everybody. We are back. This is the HTML All Things Podcast. This episode, bit of a working title. I liked it. Now I kind of don't like it. I'm not sure. Maybe it will become the actual episode title, but it's The Hype Trap, Why Cutting Edge Isn't Always the Best Choice. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about why going with the zeitgeist, going with what everyone's talking about, going with the new thing on the block, the latest thing you saw on Product Hunt or whatever, isn't necessarily always the best choice. We're going to be discussing things like the FOMO of it, maybe burnout, trying to keep up. We're going to also be talking about using the right tool for the job, something that we talk about a lot on this show, where it's like, yeah, hey man, should you really be using this latest thing just because it says it's super easy? I mean, is that a marketing draw versus is that a reality? So we're going to be discussing stuff like that. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server. Share this with your friends. And if you want to learn on an interactive media player code editor, you want to learn how to code, you can get up to 20% off. That's right, up to 20% off on a new account. That's via our affiliate link, scrimba.com/links/HTML all the things. That'll be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And they're about to, depending on when this episode releases, but they're about to or recently have released some back-end courses, so you can get some actual full stack training, some full stack experience. Again, using that interactive media player code editor where you can pause, edit the code the thing that the teacher's working on, and then go back to whatever the teacher was working on after you've played with the code and broke it. So this episode, I have a bit of an introduction, more than the introduction I've already given you. And that's because I think that this episode really kind of is prefaced, by the temptation of always wanting to use the latest tech. I hear this a lot, and we've heard this on episodes of this show where we've interviewed people, and they say, oh, we're developers, we're tinkerers, we always want to use the latest thing. And I am kind of like that, but I'm also kind of not like that. I recently published on my LinkedIn a post about how I'm actually kind of stuck in my ways. Like once I find a product or a solution that works for me, I stick with it. And that is partially because I don't like change, but also because I do find value in familiarity, in that I'm able to very quickly quote things out for clients. I'm able to say the capabilities of something, and I'm able to troubleshoot things very quickly. So I'm not scrambling being like, oh my God, is this broken? Is this broken? Meanwhile, it's actually just, a simple settings toggle that would actually solve the entire issue. And I've actually just completely missed that, because I'm brand new to the product. So the thing is that there's a constant buzz around new frameworks, new tools, new platforms, new no-code things, all of the rest of it, right? And that buzz is really generated a lot by marketing, of course. There's new trailers, there's new, oh my God, build a site in 10 seconds, all that kind of stuff. But then there's also kind of the excited chatter inside of forums, inside of your own little groups, like your own little social bubbles, inside of Discords, whether they be large or small. And that chatter and that marketing brings these new pieces of technology into the zeitgeist. And of course, all of this is designed to draw you in. Of course it is. And effectively, it's designed to give that new tool users, right? So that new tool wants maybe it's a SaaS and they want new signups. Maybe they need to prove to their investors that they have a certain amount of users. And so, of course, they want you to come in. And this isn't nefarious, because maybe that tool really is revolutionary. Maybe it is amazing. But a real question you should be asking yourself is adopting the newest tool actually in your best interest? So we kind of deeper dive, I guess, into that. If you think about it, if you kind of boil it down in your head and you're like, okay, everybody's talking about, let's just say React is new. You're on Svelte and React is a new thing. And you're like, I know Svelte pretty well, still have more to learn, but, this new React thing is really kind of digging at me. Well, you're going to feel pressured, like your brain might be pressuring you, or maybe your social circle, maybe that marketing is pressuring you to keep up, right? Everyone in my Discord is using React now. Should I drop everything and start using React? If I come in and ask a question about Svelte in this Discord where everybody's talking about React, am I going to get like the weird everybody stops talking and kind of looks at you figuratively and goes like, why is this guy using Svelte kind of thing? And so you need to ask that question once again, that is adopting the newest tool in your best interest, but you also need to balance, and easier said than done, but balance that pressure as well, because it is a pressure, right? Like it's like, oh, I'll drop everything and then I'll start learning React. But there's going to be consequences to that we will dive into in this episode. And also, like, you want in, like, there's a question or a set of questions that you need to ask yourself based upon this hype cycle, we'll call it. There's all this buzz, all this stuff. Are your decisions designed around keeping up with the new tools, or are they designed to push your skills, income, and business further? If you are trying to sell something, maybe you have a SaaS, maybe you sell shirts, whatever. I mean, you're trying to sell shirts. Should you go on Shopify? Or should you build something from the ground up with React? Oh, no, it's Svelte. No. We need to go to Astro. No. Which one's going to sell more shirts? Which business is going to likely sell more shirts? I mean, the person that's on Shopify in a day uses a default template just to get started and then gets all their tax stuff and business stuff set up in there and then starts selling shirts right away. They're on the market longer than you. So you need to just think about like that influence that the hype cycle has on you. You have to question, maybe I do need to learn all the new skills because I'm a person that is an influencer and I need to show those off on my YouTube channel. But if you're a person that's trying to sell shirts, if you're a person that's trying to get a job, I mean, these businesses that are going to hire you aren't necessarily going to go for the next big thing. They don't get caught up in that hype. And then as developers, again, as tinkerers, as whatever, we have to think about not only the professional angle, but also the personal angle. For many developers, they will start side projects. Many won't, but many will. And the thing is that these pressures and these questions and this learning cycle can affect those as well. So even though you're like, you know what, I'll always do the cutting edge tool on my personal project, you have to ask yourself another question. Is the goal of your personal project to learn new tools? If it is, great. You're succeeding at that goal. If you're always using the new thing, and then at work, maybe you're still using jQuery or something like that. But the real question does lie in if you have personal projects that you would like to see the actual project see the light of day, are you using the right tool for the job by constantly chasing or maybe transitioning to the latest tool, the latest platform, or the latest no-code tool?
I think some of the bias here for us especially is that we're a web development podcast. So we're going to be talking a lot, obviously, about the latest and greatest tools. So a lot of the time it might seem that we're on the bleeding edge, or we're talking about a lot of like different decisions that we make, trying different things, but that's because we're in it. Like we're part of the system that's kind of driving innovation. We're part of the system that's talking about it. What the reality is that in a lot of other places, like if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the same or similar boat of like looking at new tools. You're probably interested in the tech, but for the most part, in reality, a lot of environments, a lot of teams, they're just sticking to the tools that they know and use. And these other tools, the newest stuff, the latest and greatest, is the niche, right? Even though it's in the zeitgeist, it is in fact the thing that is the nichiest of the niche stuff. You know, like WordPress is still used on over 60% of websites, or 40%. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a massive amount. That's not in the zeitgeist, unless Matt's going off. Not you, Matt, but the other crazy Matt is going off and causing some crazy drama or something like that. Then it's in the zeitgeist. People are talking about, but not in the bleeding edge sense of things. Not in trying.
Crazy Matt does still apply to me.
Sure, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But other greasy Matt. Okay, so that's one of the caveats that I want to say to this. Is like the reason you're hearing us talk about the cutting edge a lot is because that's where we are. We're a web development podcast that talks about the newest, the latest, and greatest. But I think it's important to have these episodes where we bring people back to the middle, where like, okay, we talk about this stuff a lot, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense to always reach for the newest thing. And I think it's really important to listen to that, and like for your own career growth, instead of constantly jumping around, sometimes it is better to go deeper into understanding things that are established rather than reaching for the latest and greatest for every little thing.
I mean, that actually does transition perfectly into the next segment, which is the risks of adopting bleeding edge tools too early. Because, I mean, like you said, WordPress powers a lot of the web. It's 40 some odd percent, maybe 43, something like that, percent of the web. And I mean, that, like, WordPress, if memory serves, does come prepackaged with jQuery. It obviously is built upon PHP, which is, to the chagrin of many, but also to the praise of many as well. And like, there's a lot of different opinions out there, a lot of back and forth, you're doing this right, you're doing that wrong, whatever. But at the end of the day here, hey, WordPress exists. WordPress powers a lot of the web, and WordPress also powers a lot of businesses as well. There's a lot of plugin businesses out there that are large businesses. These aren't businesses that make $100 a day. These are businesses that are making thousands of dollars a day. These are businesses that have like 100 employees. Sometimes they have a lot of people there. And so like, that's the power. Like, you could argue that is the power of being like, hey man, like, WordPress isn't chasing the dragon. Like, WordPress is not constantly, oh, we're built on Svelte now, and we're built on Next.js. No, we're built on, no, hang on, let's go Svelte kit. No, okay, let's do Svelte front end and PHP. No, we'll go. And they're not doing that back and forth. Like, oh, we need a what you see is what you get editor. Oh, we need this. Oh, we need that. And obviously there are some directions that WordPress does take, and they make decisions, but I mean, they're still on PHP. I mean, the install of a WordPress site is very similar, if not the same as it was when, I was in high school making my first little website for a class assignment. I mean, it's the same install process pretty well. So, I mean, there's a bit of power, you could say, in choosing a direction and sort of sticking with it. So let's jump into, what are these risks? What are the risks of adopting bleeding edge tools too early? Well, if we think about it, they're bleeding edge, they're brand new. Not many people have jumped into them yet, right? They're like, no one's a master of these tools yet, which is also a pet peeve of mine, which I think I have a note to that effect later in the episode. But because they're new, I mean, how much documentation is there? How many tutorials are there, right? If you're a person that is using the tool that is the bleeding edge tool, and you're using it for exactly to the letter what it is designed to do, then absolutely, there's going to probably be enough documentation for you. The amount of projects that fill those shoes is very few. There are very few projects that don't have just a little niche thing like, oh, I am making a store that sells shoes, but I just want this very specific way of handling coupons or promo codes. And those niche issues may stump you for hours. There may not be any guides. You may have to engineer your own solution. There may not even be enough guides or enough mature guides on the actual kind of code base itself, where maybe they give you like some sort of SDK or an API to work with, where it's like, oh, devs, go ahead and use this. And it's like, well, like, sure, go ahead and use it. But I mean, like, how? I remember, Mike, when you were working in crypto like a few years ago, you were telling me that there was like full kind of segments of crypto where you just had no documentation at all, or the documentation was like, from 2 months ago, and have since done a huge update and kind of kiboshed all their old stuff. And so they literally don't have documentation at all. And so you're just kind of like piecing together the old documentation with your own knowledge. And that can be, a total disaster.
Yep. You would have to either, like, if it's a CLI thing, you would just run the help command in the CLI and just piece together the different, the different functionalities, and then nested help commands. That was one way. And then the other way, I just had to literally look at the source code of a package to see what was exported and, like, available. There was no other way to do it. Like, you just have to look at what's there for you to look at.
And whatever solution you come up with may not be the best solution. And then someone else down the road, when the documentation and the program becomes more mature, may come up with something that's way better or way more secure, more importantly, or something along those lines. And then it's like, well, great, now I got to go back and rewrite this thing. And here's the thing. You might be like, well, those issues are a thing of the past because we have AI. We have ChatGPT and we have these other programs and I can just ask it to solve this stuff for me. Not really, because AI learns on the content that's created, whether that be official documentation and official tutorials or third-party content written by, fans of a said tool. And I mean, AI with less knowledge to build off of and read and learn from will have less detailed answers naturally. And I have another niche thing that I wanted to mention too. This is something that, kind of clicks for me is sometimes I'll read a guide or listen to a YouTube video and I just kind of walk away kind of stunned. Like I just don't know what they were talking about really. I didn't really understand it. And that's because people explain things in different ways. And so if there's less guides, that means there's less ways that the same topics are explained. So if you don't get the official documentation, I mean, with React, you may not understand the official documentation, but you may understand Max, who we've had on our show before. You may understand Max's course. He may teach it in a way that makes sense to you. If you do not understand the only guide that is available, there is sometimes no or very few alternatives. And then you're going to be like, well, great. So now it's an uphill battle just because how I understand things, how my brain understands things. And that's a huge roadblock. And in this same kind of, I guess, string or thread, because like this tool doesn't have as many guides and stuff, that it officially represents the size of the community. There may be a small community, an inactive community, right? You may be the person that's kind of figuratively shouting into a Discord saying like, hey, I have X issue. Has anyone found a solution for this? And there's just no one there. No one answers you. No one knows the answer to that solution because everybody joined this Discord with the hype. They were all hyped up. They were all ready to go for this new tool. And then they realized, oh, this isn't, as easy as one of the older tools. And so they all disappeared or the hype wore off. And now you're like 30% into your project having serious trouble. And it's like, I'm kind of too far now to back off, but I'm also like, now I'm like seriously considering doing that. So how much cost of time and money and effort and everything else is this going to cost me? And let's just say that you're a wizard. You're like, I understand everything. I understand help commands and I know everything and I'm an amazing developer and I know everything and I know how to make everything. Okay, great. Even if you make everything perfectly, there's still a high likelihood of bugs and instability. So even if you program this perfectly and you program it so that it returns a number, but for some reason it just keeps returning a string, that might not be your fault. That might be the new tool's fault. Because as more users use a product, it naturally will mature with patches and hot fixes and feature updates, assuming it is supported to some extent, right? So a new offering, a new product is naturally less mature. The more niche your product, so the thing that you are building, if it is super niche or even just slightly niche, and you're using a brand new non-mature tool to build it with, there is an even higher likelihood in that case of your use case having not been tested. You are the tester. You're the person that has to go into the support forum and complain, or go into the GitHub and add an issue, or whatever the process is for the particular tool that you're having issues with. It is just natural that tools that are older, assuming they are supported correctly, will be more mature. They will have more patches, more hot fixes, more user experience, more influencers talking about it, and more things getting done and more efficiencies being added naturally. And the thing too, what if you get, I mentioned 30% in, let's say you get over that first hurdle. You get over the 30%, you're at 60, 70%, you're almost there, and you're stuck now. Like you're really stuck. And now you are truly too far in to turn around. Well, here we go. You may need to spin up something in an old tool and try to stitch the old tool and the new tool together to get that one feature done. I mean, Mike and I experienced this a lot when we were making things in Apache Cordova, very like niche apps, kiosk apps. There was a lot of kind of stitching native things together, vanilla things together, whatever you want to say. So for example, like, oh, we need like access to like the some Android hardware because this is going to run on a tablet. The performance for the web view is very, very bad. That's not really anyone's fault except for, whomever put this web view together. So we're going to have to get an actual Android developer to come in. Okay, well now how does this website converted to an app access that like native Android app, right? This is a solution. This is a workaround totally. But this is not without its caveats, which include adding technical debt, adding complexity to your project, adding another thing that you need to write in your wiki for the project. If you write your own documentation, which you should, and you need to say, hey man, like this is another big thing where if we have problems with the camera, It is not the main web app. It is something that another app developer did, and we're going to have to get another person that knows how to code in the native Android language, Kotlin or whatever it is, and they need to come in and they need to fix this. And that's a lot of complexity, and that's a lot of technical debt.
This is all 100% correct and very much a big part of the consideration. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here. If this is like a really bleeding edge tool, like it just came out, I mean, Matt's kind of put it together as like this thing has been around for less than a year, essentially, probably months, if anything else. So this is like you're on the bleeding edge. The reasons for using this are really small and niche, and we're going to talk about, I think, at the end of this episode, like when to actually use cutting edge stuff. But one thing I do want to say is that if you do have the time, or if you do have that like interest, like a hobby, tinkerer interest, a very good way to make connections, B, like flex your engineering muscle, right? C, like figure out how these things are made is using an early developed tool, like a first version of something, because a lot of times the developer of that tool, if it's open source, will be very much available for answering any questions because they're excited about someone trying to help them. So being part of that open source community, going to them, having a back and forth, that could be very valuable because that potentially that connection could lead to future jobs, could lead to future like just a friendship. It could lead to other things outside of the development sphere. And then second of all, like learning how to interact with this new tool, learning like again, if there's not much documentation, figuring out how to read the source code and interface with the source code, all of those skills are actually pretty unique and niche, but quite valuable. Like being able to be put into a team that you're able to then like take any piece of code regardless of the documentation and use it is a really like, it's a hireable skill. Like you could talk about that on a resume and be like, hey, I was an early supporter of this library and I helped them build it up. I committed to it. I put some time into learning it. That's something that's going to be of value. So there is like, yes, when you're choosing something for your production ready application, all of what Matt was saying is 100% correct. If you put yourself outside of that, and there's other reasons, but if you put yourself outside of that, there is this like tinkerer side that if you can leverage, or if you like, it could be a good way to advance in your career on that part. Now, is it guaranteed? Absolutely not. You could, the maintainer might be a dick. Like it's very like a lot of times, like, you don't know who you're going to run into. So you might want to just stop if you put a PR in and then you get told off, that's a good indicator for you to be like, okay, I'm not going to help this person, or I'm not going to go to here. But regardless, spending a little bit of time sometimes here and there, trying out these really, really new things can be a path to, expanding your knowledge, making connections, et cetera, et cetera.
This immediately reminded me of, I did a project in IT a long time ago, and we basically were bumping up against like a really niche issue, which was like we were trying to change the domain of a domain controller in like a really complex environment. And we're doing this in a test lab to just see the feasibility of it, of which it wasn't. But basically what we did was we exhausted all the documentation, or I did. I exhausted all the documentation, I exhausted all the forum posts I could find. And then I started kind of looking at more like bare bones. It was for Windows, so more bare bones Windows stuff. Having to like research all these Windows features and like how does this work and how does that work, and I ended up finding some other issues in our infrastructure that I ended up fixing because of all this research. So like that's valuable in and of itself. But then we eventually said, all right, we need help. Like this is starting to get too much. So we knew some people at Microsoft, and we reached out to them kind of on a personal level and just like, hey man, like what do you think about this? Should we open up a ticket? What should we do? And basically the consensus was like, well, man, like, you have to do this, this, and this. Like, here's like some general tips. But at the end of the day, you need to like read the spec. And it's like, no one wants to hear that, especially in IT. It's like, oh, go read the spec, go read the spec. And it's like, that's the specification. Like, that's like the kind of like the root engineering document. If you kind of want like a basic description of what it is. And it's like usually like not legalese, but it's like very specific. It's very kind of difficult to read sometimes and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, like, no one wants to do this. But again, like Mike said, very niche skill. And I used that. And what ended up happening was, like, this was weeks and weeks. This is a research project, weeks and weeks go by. And I eventually said, all right, I've boiled it down to this one issue. And I went to a forum and I asked for help. I was like, here's all the research I've done. Here's all this, like a big forum post, all this stuff. And I certainly didn't get a solution. However, I think maybe somebody answered with like some suggestions, but it wasn't exact. But I did get one or two people that were like, I'm experiencing this exact same problem. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not alone. Like, this is niche, but it's not as niche as I thought, because, like, the chances of you being on the same forum as me and stuff like that. And so, I mean, it didn't turn into anything. Like, I was working in an office, so it's not like I'm going to start like branching out. But I mean, I would have potentially DM'd that person if it was just, the company I work for now, which is mine. I would have been like, hey, I'll reach out and see what's up and see what they're working on, and maybe we can kind of like pool our knowledge. Totally cool. Totally get that. That's great. But all this to say, if you're trying to make a product, like an actual finished product, whether that be for yourself or for a client, look at all the steps it took. The steps are cool. If you are trying to learn the cutting edge, if you are trying, in my particular case, I was literally in R&D doing research and development. Yes, like 2 thumbs up for the experience. I now know how to read spec sheets pretty good, even to this day, and things like that. Totally get it. I know the forums to go to in many cases, things along those lines. Totally get it. However, if I had to do all that and a client was waiting, that's not good. Like, someone should not be toe tapping on the end of that, right? Like, that is like, so what Mike said is totally valid. And then I think it's just like 2 different cases, right? Or it's almost like, if you are after those skills, 2 thumbs up. If you're after a product, 2 thumbs down. You gotta like bring this down and be like, someone's toe tapping. We got to get going here. We got to get this stuff put together. So obviously there's like an intrinsic value in the size of your community, in the size or the amount of the documentation, and then also how good the support is, right? So like larger communities usually will offer better support. Even if you're not like talking to the community themselves, just on the Google search, there's more guides, there's more perspectives, there's more opinions, there's more projects on GitHub, there's more projects being shown off. Because there's more projects, there's more niches, more niche use cases being tested. They're being figured out, right? And one big thing here is that if influencers are involved and if influencers are having issues, their problems are commonly, not always, but commonly solved quickly because they have a community impact. If they have this huge hour-long video that is stumped at the 40-minute mark because there's a glitch, I mean, they go and talk. Sometimes they have a direct contact to one of the managers who run the tool that they're having trouble with, say, hey, there's an issue here. Here's all the stuff to reproduce it. And the community goes, yep. Or the company goes, yep. And we see this on X a lot, where someone will be like a Webflow influencer, for example. And they'll say, hey, I found a reproducible bug. And they have a decent following. And they say, hey, and they know who to tag. They don't just tag Webflow, but they tag this, like these certain developers, because they're in the community. And they say, I think this is an issue. And sometimes we'll get an answer like, hey, this is actually a feature that's coming. Hey, we're aware of this. Oh, hey, we weren't aware of this. Let me push a fix. And I've seen them push fixes out within a day in some cases. So, I mean, having influencers on the case, I know some people are going to eye roll like, oh, influencers. I mean, technically Mike and I are kind of influencer light, I guess. But and not influencer light. But the thing is like influencers are like valuable to the community, because if they have an issue, that issue may get solved, and now it's solved for everybody. It's not like they're like, oh, I'll push this patch and it only applies to your username. Like, who does that? Also, I mean, we mentioned this, but established tools often have extensive documentation, of course, but I also see that there's a lot of good examples that get added to the documentation. So not only is the documentation itself very large, it's very detailed. I'm an example learner. I'm a person where I'll read through something and understand it at about 25 to 30%, and then I'll be like, I don't know what this is. So I need to stop and I need to see an example of what you're doing. I need to see it. And then oftentimes I need to break it as well. I need to go in there. I need to play with it. I need to break it. This is why I like Scrimbo a lot, where I could stop, be like, what in the heck is this person talking about? Like, even when I took the CSS variables course, then it was like, there was a few times where it was like, I hadn't had to use variables in a while. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go through. I know CSS very, very well. There's a couple of times where even then I, read through it or watched through it, I guess, and was stumped and was like, I don't understand what they're talking about. Stop, I break some things, and that's good, right? And then I figured it out. So at that point, though, like, that's kind of what you start seeing in some of these documentations, where they'll maybe even have like full to full examples. Some of them are interactive examples, right? Like it's like the documentation goes from just writing and some pictures to actually like, here's some examples. Here's transition guides for things like, if you're coming from React, do this. If you're coming from WordPress, do this. You know, these niche, not so niche cases sometimes where you're like, hey, if you're from React, you may have this issue. This is in our FAQ. This is covered here. In some cases, there's full tutorials. Like, I mean, like not only just a documentation describing how the functions work. Some of these documentations, they are so extensive that it's like, you're almost like taking a course from them where it's like, hey, start here, go through these 10 steps. Oh, great, you did the 10 steps. Well, there's another 10 after that. It's almost like a freaking course, some of these things are. And so the established tools that have extensive documentation like are so valuable. And I mean, extensive documentation on a tool that's new is great too, but they're not going to have those examples. They're not going to have all the insights from the community yet on what they should be covering in their documentation. And things like this, having those examples, having those influencers involved, having all this is going to allow you to troubleshoot issues more quickly when the tool is established like this. There's going to be more forum posts with answers. There's going to be more patches where like, if 100 people are asking the same question, maybe it's less about them doing it wrong. Maybe it's more about the documentation being convoluted, or maybe the actual coding method is convoluted. That may get patched out. And as we add to this, like kind of like a rolling snowball, rolling down a hill, getting bigger and bigger, as we add to this knowledge pool, AI chatbots can then leverage that. They will have more to learn on, and they will have more solutions built in. You go ask ChatGPT, how do I do this? It gives you a solution. I mean, I've asked ChatGPT about new Webflow features where I'm like, hey, give me some use cases for this. And Webflow is pretty popular. It'll give me some use cases. Hey, like we think this is a use case. We think that's a use case. We think this is a use case. I mean, that comes from the fact that there's a fairly large Webflow community. There's a lot of Webflow documentation in the form of Webflow University, as well as blog posts and other things. And I mean, it speaks for itself.
I think
now,
so just to jump in a little bit here. So one kind of caveat to the larger communities or influencers point is that some really established tech has gone through enough of a ringer that it doesn't really require the pushing of influencers a lot of times and has already stood the test of time. It doesn't happen often in web development, I think, because of the compatibility issues where we just have to support so many things. But in other forms of development, a lot of times, like there's just, C is C. It hasn't changed much in the years. There's no need for an influencer to go in and try to change C. That's done through the typical, GitHub development process. And a lot of times it's the same thing with like WordPress, right? Like there's not many WordPress influencers, like tech influencers, especially like the ones that are actually talking about the code of WordPress. It's just, pushed through the WordPress open source repo. So it's not that's, I think, a part of something that's more new. Like if you want to vet a newer framework that's been around for a few years and has that, like it's growing and it has some ability to be more seasoned, that's a good way to vet it, is to see if there's influencers that are able to push for it to get better. But if you're talking about legacy stuff, if you're talking about really, really, really robust, like enterprise level things, a lot of times it's not the influencers that you're looking for, it's that support. And Matt mentioned that too, like the support of like the actual company. Are they responsive? Is the GitHub repo constantly updated? Are the pull requests is there a lot of pull requests? Is there a lot of issues? Looking at how the development community is working inside of it is another really, really good indicator for you to see if that whatever you're working on is viable to use. If the GitHub is a ghost town, right? That's an indicator for you to be a little bit nervous. Like it's not a guarantee that that's a problem because it could be such a small package that it doesn't matter. But if it's like a framework and everything's a ghost town, probably an indicator that it's either too bleeding edge or just not supported enough, and you should probably look somewhere else. The other point that I want to kind of reiterate that Matt made is the AI point. The more documentation and the more examples that are out there in open source, the higher chance that you're going to have a better experience using that with the AI chatbots. And we had an episode recently about like AI tech bias. This is part of that. Like this is why I think Next.js is running away with it at this point. Like I don't know if any other framework from a front-end framework perspective or a full stack framework perspective will ever catch it. It's because there's just so much code out there that has been trained through these AIs that anytime someone asks the simple question of, hey, can you build me this X application, it's not choosing anything other than Next.js, even if you're not mentioning Next.js. So every person is going to be led towards Next.js, and then more Next.js content will be made, and those things will be trained by it. So it's like a never-ending cycle of, I think, like essentially Next.js has won or React has won at the end of the day. And a lot of this applies to other more established frameworks. When you're using a bleeding edge tech, you're going to be fighting up, like you're going to be running uphill because you're going to need to know it much better in the terms of like not being able to rely on the documentation or like, sorry, the LLM knowing it. Now, there's some advantages to that, like that, you know, if you know it really well, that could make you a better developer, but you know, you're going to need to leverage AI to exist in this world at this point. I don't think you can just ignore it anymore. So it does weigh heavily in consideration, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I definitely see the idea of like if we started like a framework of some sort, let's just say, for example, so there's lots of moving parts, right? There's like ways to update divs and ways to do this, and there's templates and all this stuff. So if we made something like that, I mean, we would lay the groundwork on how to do it and stuff like that, but we would almost make it a little bit with AI in hand. Like AI being with humans now feels like that's going to be the future. So it's like the AI is not going to be able to invent the website creator that we made, for example, Mike, if we decide to make one. But we could write our own documentation. Like we lay the groundwork. We are the ones that have the motivation to lay the groundwork, and we do so. And then the AI is able to learn from that. And as we promote, again, we're motivated to get more users and to get influencers, and then eventually maybe not need influencers if our app gets really big. But like as we like lay this groundwork, like AI is there all the time, right? Like I feel like people think that AI just knows about React. It just knows about Svelte. It just knows about gardening. It just knows about roads, like whatever. But it's because humans know, and humans wrote it, and then the AI learned with it. And like as we're writing our documentation, the AI may know how to write it in a more clear way. So we would write it, for example, brand new website creation platform. We write it, and then the AI goes, I think this is going to confuse users. This is how you should write it. So it doesn't have the knowledge about our creation tool. I mean, it would, I guess, because it's reading a little bit, but it doesn't have that knowledge quite yet. But it does know, hey, that's going to be a little confusing. Maybe we should break that up. Maybe that should be in point form, things like that. Like, okay, we build it all out. And then the AI is going to get smarter because it's going to understand from our documentation, and other people are going to write more documentation, probably assisted with AI, right? I think that like this is one of those things where like people just either think that AI knows everything, or either AI knows everything or AI can be used for everything. And I think it's more like it can be used in partnership with a lot of things, less that it's going to be used, hand in hand for absolutely everything. Like, I mean, I'm not going to use an AI to actually like lay out like a new driveway. Like if I'm actually out there like laying down like if I wanted like a tile driveway, like a fancy one, right? But I can ask AI, this is the ground, this is my climate, this is what the dirt looks like. What do I need? And it might be the thing that influences me to add proper drainage, not use a certain type of tile, not use a certain type of grout. If you even use grout, maybe skip this whole idea and just use gravel. Like it's going to be the thing that influences us. And so I feel like it's just like a helping hand that comes along with it. And it's going to be a thing that absolutely kind of sticks with us at a lot of steps. And so all this, I guess, to say is that if you are using like a cutting edge piece of technology, there's going to be less stuff to learn from, as we've already established, but there's also going to be some assumptions made, and there's going to be some mistakes, like just clear, blatant mistakes, and the AI can make those blatant mistakes as well. And so like the AI is a great tool for us to use as like a buff if you're a gamer. It's like a buff for us. But it's not the thing that's motivated to make the tool. It's not the thing that necessarily made the tool. It's just the thing that humans use to help build the tool. I talked to somebody on LinkedIn about this recently, where they said like, I don't really feel like learning to code because AI may take it over. And I was like, AI might take it over, sure. But at the same time, it's like, we are the motivator here. We are the person we are the motivation. If an AI was just like, I mean, if an AI was told like, hey, like go become an affiliate marketer, I don't know, and I could be wrong, I'm not an AI expert, but I don't think it would use any other strategy than what was actually done by humans already and shown off. It would do the same, 100 strategies or whatever. It wouldn't make a strategy 101. At most, it would combine strategy 101 and 199 and or strategy 1 and 5. It might you know what I mean? But like that, like correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but like that's just kind of how I see AI. And in this context too, obviously I've like said a bunch of stuff.
So I have seen some prompt engineers start trying to get novel solutions out of AI in the sense that are outside of its training data. I think that that's still in its early stages of being successful, but that is something that they're trying to get to. And I think that is one of the indicators when AI will be kind of reaching that kind of AGI perspective of when it will be able to develop its own solutions to issues outside of its training data, but using the knowledge of its training data, obviously, to like kind of understand the limitations and stuff. So unfortunately think that that's only a matter of time because it's already able to do probably bad solutions. Let's be serious. But I don't see that being a forever limitation. Now, that could be the thing that like takes years. So who knows? I don't want to make any concrete estimates, but I know people are working on that as we speak, and that's one of the main goals of AI.
Well, because it's interesting, because like my thought would be, like, what would it needs an initial prompt. Like that motivator is still the human that's making the initial prompt.
Right, but it can reason, right? So it can, based on your initial prompt, if you ask it to create a novel solution, then it can reason and detect all the different solutions that have already been done that it has trained on and try to think of something outside of those solutions that would do the same result. Go through like a thousand different paths in its own head before coming up with one that might work and then implement that. And again, it depends on the scope and the problem. Like I'm sure you could do something really simple right now that would prove that, but for like a more complex solution, it becomes harder and harder for AI to do that at this moment in time. It is, again, it comes back to like, do you believe the LLM has actual like capacity to reach human brain level in reasoning, right? Like we're giving it these like anthropomorphic words, reasoning, like, but it's not human reasoning. But what is human reasoning other than predicting the next set of words, right? Like we're just doing it on a much more complex level with much higher context and much more memory. Like we can remember so much more, and we have way more that we can keep in our brain versus a very primitive version of that, which is, in my opinion, what an LLM is, a very, very primitive version of a brain that can predict the next word. But we just, like, if we give it more memory, if we give it more context, and if we give it more power, again, this is more of an optimistic viewpoint, but I think that is the path to reaching brain level capacity for what we're trying to do, like for the LLMs. Like, I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that it can get there.
It's a good point. Like, I mean, like we always say that we don't know where things are going to go. And I guess like in current context, I'm correct, I think. But you are correct in that we don't know what's coming and people are working on it. And to be fair, a lot of people's strategies who are like, let's say I was credited with like an affiliate marketing strategy of some sort, that would likely be built off of the existing strategies anyway. Anyway, back to the episode. This is not the AI podcast. I want to talk briefly about businesses and why like stability is important to them, and why like you as a person who is making tools for your own business or for a client's business, like this matters, right? In this context, like things that are cutting edge are generally not the most stable. Usually a client will come to you with a problem and not a problem that has like a solution half written. So for example, a client may not generally won't come to you and say, I need to sell shirts specifically using a React static site generated, blah, blah, whatever. They'll usually just say like, I want to sell shirts online. How do I do that? That's oftentimes what happens. And I've mentioned this on this show in the past where it's like, we're a solutions architect a lot of the time, especially if you run an agency, where sometimes you're just straight up helping somebody sign up for an account on something like a Shopify and just using the default themes and things to get started. That's like totally like a viable thing that you can help people do and get paid for, because like that person had no idea, right? Like they wouldn't even know where to look. The thing is that something like a Shopify is going to be pretty stable. And if you are like, no, I'll do it all custom and I'll make it like super custom and super powerful and have all these crazy features. Well, what if you're just a solo dev? What if you just run a small business? I mean, is that new cutting edge tool that you use to make it all super custom going to be stable? Are you going to have enough stable support to deal with something that it's in and of itself is not stable? A lot of the times clients, whether they ask for this or not, are actually prioritizing reliability and stability over the trendiness of the zeitgeist of, oh yeah, like this all new React version, let's go kind of thing. They don't care about that. That person cares about selling shirts. That person cares about selling books. They do not care in a lot of cases about what they use. Now, there's some obviously niche cases where people will approach, and not even super niche really, where we've been approached several times at this point, where someone will come to us and say, our marketing department would like a new blog. They know WordPress, make it on WordPress. But that's also kind of open-ended. Like WordPress can be used for a lot of things. You could add a page builder, you could not. You could add a million plugins, you could not. You could just be blog only. You could add Yoast, you could add a CRM, you can do a whole bunch of different things. So it's still very open-ended, but sometimes the client will come to you with like a partial solution in mind. And if you really think about it, just in the grand scheme, I mean, a product that you use every day, if it goes down every day, is that product really going to have long-term success? Likely not. The maintainability, which is hand in hand with reliability, is realistically, it's really key for long-term success. Like, so if you're running an agency and you're like making web apps and websites for clients, maybe you're a freelancer doing the same thing, but time is money and maintenance is a part of the thing that you get paid for. But if the site keeps going down, if it constantly needs like fixes, if it constantly needs you to actually intervene to get things done, I mean, like I said, time's money. Like you're spending a bunch of time going in there, like fixing things. This is time that you are wasting in your own brain where you're constantly thinking about all the things that you need to do to intervene. It's also time where a lot of small to medium business guys are not going to pay you for anything outside of regular maintenance. If this thing keeps going down, you're kind of stuck. Now, whether that's legally or whatever, but you're kind of stuck fixing this thing. And even if you say refuse to do it for more pay, I mean, that's not a good impression on the client, because then they're going to say, this person just built me something that's a lemon, and now I can't fix this. Like now I can't like use this reliably, excuse me. I can't use this to push my business forward. I'm not set up for long-term success, like straight up. I need something that's maintainable within a reasonable amount. And you, as the freelancer or agency owner, want to have as many clear thoughts, clear brain space to grow your business. You don't want to be constantly dealing with a troublesome project. We've had this, or we've had troublesome projects that are meant to bring in like $1,000 a month or so. Not a small amount of money, but not a life-changing amount of money or enough to pay off all our expenses. And this project was just a disaster, constantly going down, constant issues. Now, we couldn't choose the stack. There's a bunch of stuff around that. We couldn't choose the stack. The stack came to us. It was a whole deal. The point of the matter is, though, same issue here. That thing was not maintainable. That thing was not set up for long-term success. And every day there was something. Every single day. Oh, we ran out of storage space. We ran out of this. This went wrong. Somebody logged in and clicked a button that no one else has clicked. Now the site's down. Oh, this is broken. That's a security problem. We had to change the core files to fix this. Then we updated. Now those changes are gone. Now things are broken. Disaster. Maintainability and reliability are super, super important to actual business activities. And cutting edge tech, it's not necessarily the most stable. It's not the most stable. It's not the most tried and true. And we've mentioned maturity. It's not the most mature. So total cost of ownership matters more than novelty. Think about this. Client comes to you and you know, gives you a problem and you're all excited. You can use the new, whatever it is. Again, let's just say React is new. I can use React. Okay, cool. Well, is that newest tech, is React in this hypothetical a novelty that you can show off to your tech bros? Or is this a business decision? You need to ask yourself, should this project be done with React? Is this a thing that is going to help the project? Or am I trying to help myself? Am I trying to get clout? Am I trying to feed my addiction, realistically, to moving on, to trying new things, to building new things with the newest thing, the cutting edge, right? We've talked to people where this is a classic developer thing, where they're like, anything that is not custom coded is bad. Sorry to say this, but that's stupid. And the reason why that's stupid is because time is money, and there's a reason why other products exist. It may not be stupid in your particular case. I'm not trying to call you out. If you're a person that's doing R&D, if you're just trying to get your code skills up, I totally understand where you're coming from and you want to always try the new thing. If you're a person that builds everything from the ground up every single time, we've seen people say this, I only do custom code. And then they get stuck on stupid bugs, like they can't do something simple like, well, not simple, but they can't do something like process credit cards, or they can't get their slider to work, or they can't get anything but their homepage to work because there's some sort of routing issue and things like that. And it's like, these problems have been solved by other tools, right? Like just being closed-minded to anything but I'm going to custom code everything, I truly believe is foolish. Custom code absolutely has a place. No-code tools have a place. Hybrid of those have a place. And also phasing out your project where you go, okay, I'm going to start on a no-code tool. I'm going to grow to this point. Once I hit these many users, I'm going to custom code. Like, that makes sense. That makes total sense. But really question yourself. Are you custom coding this just for the novelty? Should this decision be based on business? Sometimes the answer to that's no. Oftentimes the answer to that's yes. And so you really need to think about, you're not only you making things as like a technologist, as a developer, or whatever, you need to really start looking at it and saying, hey man, I'm a freelancer here. Like, if I could get this done tomorrow, like, that'd be huge. Like, well, maybe you should use a tool that would allow you to finish it tomorrow. There's also a lot of risk, right? As you keep adding, new, like, let's say you run an agency and you have a whole bunch of clients come to you. As you keep adding new cutting edge things, unproven tech, now you have a problem because, okay, this guy's down, that person's down, business is having issues. You are now no longer running an agency. You're running a support website. You are now constantly fielding tickets. All you do is help people. You're only fixing things. That's all you do. If that's what you want to do, great. But I mean, you were growing when you were accruing those clients. Business risk increases with unproven tech, 100%, right? Maybe that unproven tech proves itself to be really reliable. Fantastic. But do you want to be the guinea pig there? Or you decide to spin up like, oh, I'm taking everybody. I have 100 clients. I'm taking everybody off Shopify. I'm going to this new thing. Go to the new thing. It goes down every other day. Fantastic. That you're going to look like a fool at the end of the day. There's a higher risk there because the tech is not proven.
I think the other part of that risk is security. You use a new auth method that just came out, and it gets, because it hasn't been in people's hands and people haven't tried to break it, someone is able to exploit it, and now all of your user data is gone. So when you're using something more mature, you have the advantage of everyone has already gone through the ringer, like the code has already gone through multiple audits from people trying to hit it, trying to penetrate it, and everything's fine. If you're using something new, a lot of times that's not the case. And worst case scenario, if you're using something cutting edge without much support, who knows what is in it? It could be something that is literally malicious. right? You don't know that. Like NPM packages are constantly being exploited for many different things in security. So I've become a lot more wary of using NPM, like just packages or frameworks and stuff like that. Like anytime someone brings up, hey, let's just use this, my first thought is, okay, do we need it? B, let's really audit it a little bit. Like, is there a lot of activity? Can we take a look at what the activity is? Is it fake activity? Like it's becoming a very serious issue where you get a dependency that can come in and exploit users of your product or yourself. Like it puts it on your computer, right? When you npm install something that's on your computer, it could take something over. It could steal your keys. It could do it. Like it has access to as much as it needs, and therefore it's just prudent to be wary of using new things right now, especially.
The thing too with that is like an npm package, like if you think about it, it's just like kind of like an app. It's like, would you be okay just downloading like any app on the like Google Play Store or on the App Store without looking at reviews, without doing anything? And obviously like Apple and Google, they have, you know, due diligence and they do check for viruses and things like that. But I mean, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of apps, and it's not going to be perfect. And so, like, would you be comfortable doing that? If you're not, I mean, like people, and myself included, will audit, kind of quote unquote audit things as simple as a mobile app. I'll go check the reviews. I'll see how useful it is. Has it been updated? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Is it what is it? Oh, it's good. Okay, cool. And then like that's it. Then it's good. Then I'll use it. But like a lot of people will just add npm packages like left, right, and center. And it's like, I remember I added an npm package one time to add Tailwind CSS, and I was just doing this. I was in training. I was like training up on an Svelte project, and I added it, and then I realized all it did was literally add like some link tags and like added like the like, oh yeah, like just, you know, bring in like CSS, like bring in Tailwind the CSS and all the files it needs. And I was like, I could have just literally went to the Tailwind CSS documentation and copied those lines and placed them here. And I have an npm package now. So like, what if that npm package updates in the future? Like, I'm not saying it's going to, but it could. And imagine projects that have hundreds of these things. I mean, there's a reason why we say, you know, WordPress bloat, and that's kind of a meme. WordPress gets bloated with a lot of plugins because people just go friggin' nuts. And I mean, that transitions perfectly into my next point, which is just start using the right tool for the job. And it's easier said than done. I'm going to be clear. I use the wrong tool for the job all the time. I make mistakes. I decide to custom code things when I shouldn't because there's things there. I also don't custom code things when I should. I make mistakes. But here's the thing. Try to use the right tool for the job. That's kind of my mantra. Realistically, if you have a simple, small project, simple does not necessarily mean it has to be the most cutting edge, right? Go ahead and just use WordPress. Like, if somebody wants to write about plants in their backyard, they want a personal blog, they approach you, you're a freelancer. I mean, do you need to custom code that? No. You can use WordPress. You could even use hosted WordPress, like from WordPress.com. Help them set it up, and that's it. If they need something custom coded, by all means, do it. But man, like, wouldn't it be nice to just not have to worry about the hosting and all that stuff and not worry about the maintenance? I mean, you don't have to really with WordPress.com, like, and any other hosted service, no-code tool. Like, really, you don't need to. So that's a business decision, and like, you're still going to help the person out. What you really want to do is you want to also take a look at the complexity of the project and the goals of the project. So, for example, we've had people where they are a medium-sized business, meaning that they could realistically be spending thousands of dollars a month on CRM and using it. But we've approached them and said, okay, where's your marketing staff? And there's 2 marketers. And it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, you guys are paying $4,000 a month for a CRM. What are you guys doing? And then you go through all their goals and all their, like, the things that they need, and you realize that they basically need, like, a mom and pop blog because they don't really get that many leads from the internet. And it's like, what? Why are you paying all this money for this CRM? You don't need a CRM for something simple like that. Someone's hobby blog, things like that. You don't need that. And also, like, consider time and budget constraints. Like, the project generally dictates the budget usually. So let's just say, even if you have $1 million, like you're a serial entrepreneur and all that, whatever, you have $1 million and you want to write about your plants in your backyard, you don't need to spend $1 million because you have it on making like some mega, like, crazy awesome blog that, like, it sounds silly. It's like, don't spend the $1 million on that blog. Like, spend 10 or 20 or whatever it is a month, and just like the goal of your project is that, hey, I plant plants in my backyard and I kind of want to share my tips and tricks with people for fun. So I only have like an hour a day or an hour a week to write up a blog post. So I'm not going to like spend any time managing my website and doing all this stuff. I'm literally going to log in and press new post and type. You don't need $1 million for that.
Yeah, this is like that classic, like, hey, I set up a Kubernetes cluster with like 15 different Docker files and 10 different databases for my 3 users. Like, you know, you can get
Like,
free hosting. You can use Vercel to do the deployment. Like, there's like a million different options that are just way easier to test out your product than over engineering something and spending a bunch of money. Like, and I've seen it. Like, the thing is that we're talking about it like it's something that, you know, crazy people do. I've personally seen it done like 5 times. Like, where people will literally set up a Kubernetes cluster on AWS, spend hundreds of dollars a month on a product that hasn't even touched a customer, right? Like, that's crazy. Like, the overhead of spinning all that up, spending time learning it, maintaining it. Like, yeah, you learn it a couple times and you're fast at it, but you're still spending time writing all those config files. Like, it's just, to me, that's insane. Like, that's why these tools, like, that's why this DevOps CI/CD tools exist, like GitHub Pages, Vercel, Netlify. Like, all those things are meant to like get that idea out quickly, test the concept, and then either scale with them or scale, like, you know, if you're hitting 1 million users, yeah, scale to Kubernetes. But then it's justified, right? Like, there's just so many different ways to approach that problem, and choosing the most complex one seems to be the approach that a lot of developers take, but it doesn't have to be.
It commonly happens when someone is like so worried about scaling up, where they're like, well, if I hit this many users, then my site's going to go down. And I have that conversation with clients all the time where I'm like, hey, if you hit 1 million users, you're in a different place. Like, right now, you're at 0. You're at 100 maybe, if we're trying to update some of your, like, an old blog that you have. If you hit 1 million, you are in a different spot. Like, yeah, you're going to have some growing pains. That makes sense. Do you really want to be spending like over $1,000 a year right now when you don't have it? When you could be putting that toward marketing or whatever to get to the point where you have 1 million users and your site crashes and you're like, oh my God, now we got to scale up. Like, you are going to be in a different spot than worrying about $100 or $1,000 a year. So let's let's look at the budget, the time constraints. Let's look at that and make an intelligent business decision here and say, okay, like, this website is not going to be like the empire that like ruled the internet. You know, don't worry about that yet. If you scale up to that point, then you scale up to that point. And at that point, you'll have so much money likely that you'll just say, somebody get me a site. You know, you'll just literally like put it out on X or something. Someone get me a site that does this, help me right away. They might charge you 20 grand and you're like, don't care about 20 grand. I need my business site back up. Much different than you being like, I hope that my site gets 10 visitors today. Much different spot. Much, much different spot. And my final section here is more of like, I guess, the mental health angle of all this stuff, which is like kind of like, again, chasing like all the hype, chasing all that stuff. And it's going to be burnout and FOMO. You're going to get some burnout and FOMO if you always try to keep up. Now, some people, you know, maybe won't experience this. Everyone's different. But in general, many people will experience this. Why is that? Well, if you're constantly learning new tech stacks, it's a stop and go mentality, right? You never really master any of the tools that you're using because you're constantly like, oh, got to do another tutorial. Oh, don't know how that works. Oh, how do sliders work? Oh, are there plugins? Like, you know, you're all over the place. It's like, there's comfort in having a comfort zone in that. Yes, I understand it. You know, people, they're like, you shouldn't have a comfort zone. But when clients come to you for like asking real questions, I mean, having a comfort zone where you can reliably say, these are the features I can make for you is pretty good. And it's a pretty good business decision. Also, you may experience mental fatigue and loss of motivation because you may start comparing yourself to others on social media. So, for example, I personally see social media posts claiming to be gurus or masters on software, and the software released last month. And that's exhausting because you're like, I'm not a master of that. I'm an idiot. You know, I'm a fool. Well, so is that other person, really. Like, they may have like completely put themselves into this thing and they're the most guru-ish, but they're still not going to be like a master of this software yet How do you master stuff with just like a couple of weeks work? So this sort of chasing and seeing other people that are like, I've already chased and I'm winning. Look at me. Mental fatigue, loss of motivation, not good. Also, if you're a person that constantly starts and stops and starts and stops, as we discussed, may have an issue finding the time to actually master tools. Always putting it off. Well, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'll worry about it later. I want to learn and learn and learn. And now you've done the My First App tutorial of 8 different tools, and you can't make anything good in any of those 8 different tools. It takes time to learn new tools, and it also takes time to actually develop new projects. You have to ask yourself, which one's more important to you? Learning the new tool or making the new project? It really does depend on your situation. If you're a person that is trying intentionally to learn new tools, power to you. If you're a person that is trying to get a project up and running, don't worry that Astro is a thing that exists and you started in Svelte. Who cares? Unless Svelte is giving you a massive headache and a massive problem, and it's a business decision to move from Svelte to Astro for some reason, who cares? If you care about the project, then you care about the project. If you care about the technology, then you care about the technology. And some people, yes, oh, I care about both. Fantastic. Which one do you value more? Because you're going to have to make a decision, because indecision is going to be a bad for you too. It's another bad business decision. And with all this, effectively, you really should strive to, but may struggle with, accepting that it is okay to not use the newest tech. You may feel inadequate for not using the latest tech. Oh, I'm using jQuery. Well, if I'm using jQuery to handle what my checkout cart looks like, the person that's buying the shirt that I'm selling didn't go, oh my God, I really want this shirt, but they're using jQuery? Who does that?
Web developers, maybe?
Web developers, maybe, but that's such a niche. That's so specifically niche. No one's gonna. I wouldn't even care. I might be like, oh, jQuery, raise an eyebrow, and then, all right, pay. And that'd be it. I would just pay for the shirt. Yeah. I'm here for the shirt. I'm not here for the jQuery checkout experience.
Yeah, realistically, no one's checking. Even web developers aren't checking when they're checking out on something.
No.
Unless it's weird. To be fair, I have done a weird thing where, this is a really weird process. This looks like it was custom built. It was a pizza store or a pizza shop that was selling pizza. And usually they have Stripe or whatever, they have random, generic integrations to do their delivery, or Uber Eats or something. This was a completely custom built one with a really complex form. And I'm like, someone custom built this freaking checkout system? I got to see how they did this. So I went into that. I was actually, it was pretty cool. It was a really old system, but really well done and stuff. So there are some nerds out there, but we're talking 0.00001% of the population. So yeah.
And did you order a pizza?
No, I liked it. Yeah, I liked what they built, so I definitely ordered it. Yeah.
And if you didn't like what they built, would you have ordered a pizza?
If there was security issues that I found, I wouldn't order a pizza.
Well, that's
yes.
I mean that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not gonna if it's just visual, I don't give a crap. Or if it's jQuery, I'm not gonna give a crap. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially when it's just it makes the number one show up when there's one pizza.
Correct,
there.
yeah.
That's not really a security problem, generally speaking. And also, one of the things that may give you some FOMO or some burnout is you may have a fear of falling behind in your career. If you're a person that is constantly stuck in the cycle of trying new tech, and then you never actually put that new tech into practice, what level of experience can you honestly present on your resume? I did all the starting tutorial for these 8 pieces of technology. Cool. What did you build in React? Well, just the starter project. What about Svelte? Just the starter. Webflow? I just started with a blank template, or I started with a pre-made template. WordPress? I got it installed and working. Not great. Again, there is power in the comfort zone. There is power in the familiarity of being this is what I do when I build WordPress sites. This is what I do when I build custom sites. This is what I do when I build Webflow sites. There is power in that. And obviously, falling behind can be a bit of a problem. And me saying, just avoid burnout and FOMO. Easier said than done. It's different for everybody. But I think a lot of it does really come down, just kind of as a closing note for me. It really kind of comes down to whether you want the product at the end or whether you care about how the product is made. And if you do care about both, choose which one you care about like the most. If you only care about the tech and you're a person that is like an advocate for web development as a community, you're in a different spot than someone that's like, I really want to have a cool blog, but I just can never actually finish it. Like, well, maybe just finish it. Like, it sucks. Like, it, you know, you're going to worry about the technology and stuff. But if you, what I do is I picture me having it. And I'm like, if I had this blog already and it was jQuery, would I be like, I hate it, throw it away? I mean, for me personally, no, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make that now. And I want to say, easier said than done. I have like 10 million side projects that we've thought of. Mike as well, have never built it or started building it and then started stopping tutorials, start and stop with Svelte kit, easy to start and stop. It's kind of a meme of the developer community. But I mean, Mike and I were just discussing before the show. It's like, it's time for us to start creating some stuff, because like, I'm not going to like share any plans or anything, because it's still very much in its infancy, but it's still very much like, I feel like all I'm doing again is kind of being like a support center, and that's great and all, and I appreciate the money and I appreciate working for people, but I'm starting to go a little insane. So I'm a victim of this same thing, not necessarily chasing new projects, but like making weird business decisions and like not necessarily like executing as much as possible. And this like chasing new tech is one of the reasons. But I think that's it. Unless you have anything else to add, Mike, which you do, because I accidentally closed my Patreon document. I always close that and not the show notes every time at the end of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, just some final closing notes on this. It's okay.
Forced closing notes.
Yeah, the forced closing notes. It's fine. It's honestly fine to try out bleeding edge tech, with keeping in mind again that if you're trying really, really bleeding edge tech, that could actually be a security issue. Learning how to use dev containers, wink, wink, might save you on there. But regardless, it's okay to try out new things. There could be some benefits, but it's really, really important to understand the separation of like trying stuff out and wasting your time and your company's time and your clients, your users' time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, super important to have that distinction. Don't want to scare you from trying new things either. So I think this episode kind of laid out both really well. It's important to have that perspective.
Thank you, Mike. And I actually have my Patreon document open now. So if you want to support episodes like this, you want to support closing statements like this, that's you can check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML all the things. Check out the tiers and give that a go. Many thanks to our $3 tier patrons: Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Stin Taxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. I'd also like to give a shout out to Michael Araka, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaught.dxg.com. And if you want to start learning stuff, you want to start learning some code, and possibly even full stack at this point, because like we don't know when this episode is going to drop, but full stack is coming soon as of recording, go check out Scrimba. If you make a new account, if you are like a new person, we have a 20% off discount for new accounts. You can go check that out. That's our affiliate link, scrimba.com/links/HTML, allthethings.com. And that link will be in the show notes on HTML, allthethings.com. If you just want to go there and click it, all the deets are there too. We list it all so you can read it, review it, whatever. Feel free to leave a comment or review on the platform that you are listening to this on. And this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.